Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see the summary of What is it like to be a trope by Mario Ortiz-Robles. Mario Ortiz-Robles has also authored the book The Novel as Event and co-edited Narrative Middles Navigating the Victorian Novel. The main theme of this book is representation of animals in literature, that is how animals are shown in literature. The power of tropes in language. Tropes means if one thing is coming again and again, it can be an event, it can be a situation, it can be characters, or it can be metaphors and other literary ornaments which are used again and again. And then the other theme is human understanding of non-human livings, how human beings understand other living beings which are not humans, and how they use animals as vehicles to express human ideas, and the role of language used in shaping animal perception, that is how we have what idea we have about a particular animal and how literature and language have shaped that idea, and mainly the intersection of literary studies and animal studies, that is what is common both in literary studies and in animal studies. In this book, he starts with a question which was asked by Thomas Nagel. Thomas Nagel had asked the question, what is it like to be a bat? That is, he says, if you are a bat, then how will you feel, how will you react, or how will you behave? And actually this question explores how humans attempt to imagine and understand the non-human consciousness. What you are thinking may not be the real thought of that animal, but what you are thinking is what you are going to express in your book. And that is the question Thomas Nagel had asked. Now Mario argues that the only way of understanding the animal and saying to others that I have understood like that is you can express it only through language. And that also particularly it's a figurative language called tropes. That is, if I have understood an animal in one way, that is, I'm saying dog is a friendly animal, it's a very faithful animal. Another person also should have observed a dog and he should have expressed the same idea. Another person same. Finally, where human beings will come to a conclusion that dogs are friendly, dogs are faithful. So this is the trope, that is the same idea being expressed by others, and finally that will be the fixed idea. And here he says in literature, animals are not represented as biological beings. They appear as figures, metaphors, symbols, or narrative devices. And these literary animals actually function as the tropes which human beings have perceived about them, what they have told about them. And animals are mediated through cultural interpretation, because culture is also represented when we are expressing our ideas about animals. And all the knowledge we have about the animals are because of the stories, myths, metaphors, and linguistic constructions which we have read or heard or received, and that has shaped our ideas or knowledge about these animals. And here Mario introduces the idea that the trope is a cognitive structure. It is a trope that shapes how we think, perceive, and categorize the world, and in that it also includes animals. And whenever animals appear in text, whether as symbols of innocence, savagery, loyalty, instinct, or freedom, they only serve as vehicle for human ideas, that is what the human beings are thinking about them, and not as real animal subjectivity, because we cannot access the animal's own perspective. How will you know what a dog is thinking, what an elephant is thinking, what a lion is thinking? We only perceive that it is thinking like that, and we perceive that it is behaving like this because of this reason. And therefore the animal in literature is always already a constructed trope. And he also examples from all the literary works where they show animals in literature, and this often serve human emotional or intellectual need rather than the real representation of those animals. And he argues that paradoxically calling animals mere tropes is not dismissive, because you cannot go and you cannot understand each and every animal on your own. So these tropes are actually powerful tropes because they organize systems of thought and create frameworks of meaning. And he stresses that tropes shape ethics as well, because if animals are perceived through certain tropes, like I'm saying, certain things means it is only because I have understood that animal like that. That is, we say dogs are loyal, fox is cunning, lamb are sacrificial, and all this is because the tropes have influenced human attitudes and actions towards actual animals. And he also criticizes human attempts to imagine the inner lives of animals, and he proposes that these attempts always collapse into metaphor. And so therefore, the literary animal subjectivity is a linguistic construction and not the biological truth. And here he also says the literary studies and animal studies intersect because both fields examine how this representation influences meaning and how language shapes our understanding of the other living beings. And he argues that recognizing animals as tropes acknowledges that literary animals and biological animals operate in different ontological planes, and we must analyze them accordingly. That is, we should not perceive it according to only one idea, but why not try in the other ways also. And he also investigates the limits of anthropomorphism and showing that when we try to give animals human-like emotions, that is generally in text when we represent an animal, we will make them to behave with human thoughts and their voices, and what we are actually doing is we are extending a human trope, that is we are making these animals as humans rather than actually revealing this animal interiority. And he also argues that tropes are epistemological tools and they set boundaries on what can be known, that is what is already known only will be expressed in the other books also which are going to come in the present and in the future. And tropes govern how animals appear in literature and how readers also perceive these animals. Literature plays a major role in shaping societal attitudes about nature, ecology, and species hierarchy. And therefore, he suggests that instead of trying to imagine animal consciousness, scholars should examine how animals circulate within text and how they produce meanings and how actually tropes determine their interpretive roles. And tropes show animals like the beast, the pet, the monster, the companion, or the metaphorical stand in cultural histories which actually define this animal-human relationship. And he emphasizes that troping the animal is inevitable, it cannot be avoided, and it is not a mistake because language cannot escape figurative structures. So our encounters with animals in discourse will always pass through the filter of tropes. And literature exposes the gap between human and non-human worlds, and this gap is both a linguistic limitation and also a philosophical problem. The study of animals in literature should shift focus from the impossible task of accessing animal consciousness to a more productive exploration of how animals operate as figural constructs within narratives. And he concludes by asking, what is it like to be a trope? That is, he started with, what is it like to be a bat? And now he changes the bat to trope, and he says that instead of seeking real animal subjectivity, we should investigate how these tropes behave, how they circulate and constrain meaning, and create the literary animal as an object of study. And understanding animals as tropes actually reveals why literary representations of animals matter, because tropes shape imaginations, ethics, cultural systems, and ultimately the human animal relationship. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box. Like the video, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe and support. Thank you.